We are live for the front door show. And as we do this every day at 8 o'clock, I just want to let everybody know that thank you for your big, huge support. This has been a great show for everybody out there and stuff like that. And today we have Rick Guerrero. Rick, as I tell all my guests, why you're introducing yourself, tell them all your links, who you are, blah blah blah, and to kind of give you a short intro, I'm going to go start sharing as well on the
Yeah,
Facebook as well. So, Rick, take it away.
absolutely. Angelo, so first of all, thank you very much for having me. This is a pleasure, and I applaud you for doing this. This is very, very cool stuff, as we mentioned offline. I shared with you. I work in a technology space, and I see a lot of Zoom action going on, and Blue Jeans, and all the technology platforms that people connect. But this is a unique recipe. I really, really appreciate what you're doing here. You're getting that history, that background of various DJs and entertainers and promoters and things of that nature. So thank you, first
You're
of all.
welcome.
Second of all, yes, my name is Rick Guerrero. Thank you all for tuning in. Yeah, I will share that I do have a Facebook page that I recently built, maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, or sometime within the last 10 weeks when COVID broke out, that focuses around DJing, right? And that is what facebook.com, and it's DJ Rick Guerrero, all one word. So definitely go out there, check it out. Occasionally I'll do live streaming. I was doing every Friday. Now I've cut it back to maybe bi-weekly, and I'll be doing one this Friday as well. But in addition to that, I also have some other links. Mixcloud is one of them, and that's just Rick Guerrero. I discovered that by just tuning into other, performers and DJs, old colleagues of mine who have their own accounts out there, and that's a very cool platform. I think they're taking it a different direction. So I decided to create a little account there and uploaded some of my mixes and things of that nature. So if you haven't done so, please do check it out. Facebook.com/DJ Rick Guerrero, and out there you'll see various links to different content that I have. So
So
that's
let's
me.
let's talk because I want to make sure that I have everything set up. And
Yep.
so occasionally what happens is that it freezes, I freeze, I get kicked out per se, but it still runs. So don't worry about it. If I freeze and get kicked out, I always tell me to get hard line and stuff like that. And I'm doing
Yeah.
everything to, and I get that. So I'm kind of setting up my backup per se. Um,
Yeah.
so, Rick,
Yes.
let's start from the beginning. When did you first start DJing? What was your
Yeah. Yeah. What was that aha moment, huh? Um, for me, so one, as I mentioned, you're doing a wonderful job, and I had the opportunity to watch a few DJs, folks who I'm very familiar with, who I've had the opportunity and pleasure to work side by side with, and it sounds like we have this like pattern, right? Like we all tuned into those DJs, on the BMX and the CRX and the CYCs of the world. Um, and as I did, as did I, right? So I also listened to those late night mixes by none other than Kenny Jason, Julian Perez, but then also the Bad Boy Bills, but then also some of those smaller radio stations, right? The WCRXs of the world and the CYCs of the world. DJs that I haven't heard from in years or heard of in years. But let me take it just one step back. What brought me or what attracted me to music, it's that universal language, right? And I think it's something that we all, it just brings you a bit of calmness, right? At least for me, it does. And it's my escape. So I really do like a variety of music. And I get that from my parents, my mom and my dad. They always had music on in the house, always, just forever, right? Every time I would walk in the house, there was something playing, from the Beatles to Kenny Rogers to Chente to just a variety of artists, right? So for me, it was always having music on was not unusual, right? Um, and taking a few steps into probably the 83 to 85, I would say about 85, is when I started listening to those mixes and the mix shows, and I would take trips to the mall with my parents, and And back then, we would go. I lived on the south side of Chicago in McKinley Park, Bridgeport area, and we would go to the mall, right? And I would go to the music stores. And back then you had vinyl, right? You had and cassettes, but you didn't have CDs back then. So I would go through the vinyl, and I remember picking up my first records. It was a song called Mind Games by Quest, and My Forbidden Lover by Taps. And then my mom bought Lime by Unexpected Lovers. And we just happened to buy it at this place called JR's at Fort City Mall. On the south side. So with that, I went ahead and I had this little turntable unit. It was like an all-in-one stereo unit, and like many other DJs that I've heard, they would take that and I would butt it up next to my parents' turntable, and I would try to blend it, or I would blend it with my cassettes, my mixtapes, right? And it captured me, right? It was something that I caught on right away. No one really taught me, other than just listening to folks on the radio, right?
You're talking about
So
the beat matching you caught on? Is
yeah,
that
yeah,
okay.
the beat matching. It just kind of happened, and I don't know how, I don't know why. It was pretty natural to me. So I picked it up, right? And while everyone was outside playing baseball and football, I was inside, mixing with my 3 or 4 or 5 records, right? Which is why no one ever really wanted me to play on their team, because I was just terrible, at wiffle ball and baseball and all that. So yeah, so from there, I again, I at the end of the day, it comes down to me listening to folks like Julian Perez, Kenny Jason, Bad Boy Bill, the Hot Mix Five. But then other folks at different parties. A cousin of mine, Jim Morales, he used to be part of this teen club on the south side in the back of the yards. And it was Sacred Heart. Sacred Heart was the church, and they had like a hall, right? So he was
Right.
part of this teen club where they would host parties at this church hall. And I remember one of my aunts, she provided security with other folks because she was just very much in tune with the police department. She knew a lot of folks in the police department. So I would go, they would take me, and I was 7th grade maybe. And for the first time ever, I saw 1200s, Technique 1200s. I was like 7th grade, right? 7th grade. And the people that I saw mixing, this is crazy, is Radical Jess Mendoza, and Nandi Vermontes, so Nandi Max, right? So this is back when I was in 7th grade, right? And I saw these fellas, they were doing their thing, and I'm like, holy cow, this is like the coolest thing ever, and what is that thing in the middle, like, holy cow, and it was very, very new to me, right? So from there, I just kind of went from there. I started buying records. I bought my little Technique 1000s. We used to call them sausage patties because they just didn't work very well. They were belt drive turntables.
Yeah.
And yeah, so then from there, I just I was just doing it as a hobby. I think it was around high school, 88, 89, 90. I went to De La Salle, which was in the Bridgeport area, so on Michigan Avenue and 35th. Oh, you're a Meteor.
So did I. Yes.
Get out of here.
Yes.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
I love it. That's
Yep.
awesome. So, a wonderful school. My father went there, and some of the best times of my life. And that's where
Oh yeah.
I met.
That was before it went co-ed, right? That was
Oh,
you
yeah.
went there when it was okay.
Yeah, and I used to have teachers who would come up to me. I was a little troublemaker. I wasn't the greatest student, but I had teachers that would come up to me. We used to discipline your father, and we're going to do the same thing to you. If you don't watch out.
Oh, so they remembered your dad?
They remembered my dad, Mr.
Oh,
Sheehan.
that's not
Mr.
not a
Sheehan.
good thing.
Yeah,
That's not a good thing.
exactly.
Well, by the way, Mario Reyes also used to go there as well. So
Oh, get out of here!
we're
Holy cow!
classmates. We were
That's
classmates, yeah.
that's crazy. Wow, I didn't know that. Well, that's good.
And
That's
then
good to
Rich
know.
Morales Rich, and then I found out Rich Morales was obviously older, but he went there too as well. So there's
Ah,
a lot of people, you know.
yeah, I love it. Yeah, I mean, the school is very close and dear to my heart. You know, I had a lot of great memories, a lot of meaningful relationships, you know, out of there, and just, but you know, from a DJ perspective, that's where things kind of open up a little. I went to school with, I don't know if you remember Rick the Ripper.
Yeah.
Rick the Ripper, he was there. He was maybe 2 years older than me. Yeah, I think he was like a junior, and I was a freshman. Um, Another guy, Furious Fern. I don't remember who else. A few others, and they, thanks to them, they're the ones that really introduced me to you know, a variety of other folks. Danny the Wild One, Fast Boy Javi, a bunch of other folks who went to a variety of different other schools, right? I was in my little bubble in McKinley Park, and they just kind of expanded that those relationships, right?
Just,
Um,
just to let you know, we got some meteors. Thing shouts out
oh, good. De
on
La
our
Salle. That's
so,
right.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
right. You know, and my wife always tells me, she's like, I don't understand this connection you have with your high school friends. Like, I don't have this connection with my high school friends. I was like, I do. I don't know, you know, and I'm very proud to where I went, you know, where I went, right, you know, in high school. So yeah, go Meteors. That's right.
Yes, yes, yeah, exactly. Jesus Jr. is crying out it. Yes, 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 yes.
Jesse, that's right. That's Gino's
Yeah,
cousin. That's right. Jesse,
yes.
yes. Oh my goodness, I forgot all about that.
Well,
Yes,
here, I mean, but not to cut you off, but I want to tell you what
but
just mentioned your aha moment. I remember my aha moment is when I heard phasing for the first time.
oh
You
yeah,
know, that was
yes,
the aha moment. That was the thing that caught me, and it
yeah,
was because of a record that I have, and I was doing only one turntable, so I used to manipulate the turntable and the what I was playing on the radio, like in halfway, so you can hear both.
yes.
So the song was God, I'm gonna get you, sucker. No, 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 no. I forgot this. It was a funk song, and the
Yeah,
song's playing, and I'm like trying to get the exact same song, and then finally I get it,
yes,
and then I heard the phasing, the,
yes,
you know, and that was
yeah.
it. That was the that took me
And
in.
it's really, you're right, and it's really cool, and it's funny because you bring back a memory, because I remember, you know, specifically around phasing, and it was, I don't know, it was, it may have been in seventh, eighth grade. I don't remember, but
Please, please explain for some people who don't know what we're talking
yes.
about. Please.
So phasing, I'll try to do my best at this. I know phasing is something that for those in the non-DJ speaking world, it was used a lot heavily within bands, right? And they have an instrument or a unit. Again, I'm doing my best here. A flanger, and I think you use it with guitars, and it gives this sort of like a stereo type of. Uh, the first time I ever heard phasing was in a Chicago song. I think I don't remember the name of it, but there's a part of the song by the group Chicago where they're playing the guitar, and it goes into this phasing, and I'm like, that is really really cool. Anyhow, the way you can produce phasing with we'll say with two records is you play them at the same time, same spot, same time, and it creates this really really cool like stereo sound, if you will, right? um
I think it's more of like a tunnel like a
yeah,
tunnel vision
yes,
of sound, like a tunnel vision of sound.
it is, yeah, yeah. It's yeah, it's harder to describe, but I remember, I remember also one day I was playing around. I don't know what I was doing, but I remember this moment. I had a record in my hand, um, and I had this speaker, and music was playing, and I just, I don't know what I was doing, but I was doing something with the record, and then I caught this phasing sound. What I thought was, you know, I didn't know what it was called at the time, but it was like a phase. I called my dad over. I'm like, hey, don't you hear that? He's like, no, I don't hear anything. I'm like, no, I'm hearing it, you know, and there's music bouncing off the record, the solid platform, and was creating this phase sound, right? So anyhow, I'll do some phasing on Friday for those who tune in. And then I'll share. This is what phasing is. Um, so yeah, that's again, going back to high school. That's where I met a lot of folks.
Right.
And there was one kid in town, and he's an old friend of mine. He's actually cousins with a best friend of mine who passed away some time ago. But Danny the Wild Child, I don't know if you know that name, but very big in the jungle industry. His older brother, Joe, he had 1200s, right? And he was there's the only kids in town in within McKinley Park that had 1200s, right? So we would go to their house, and and then finally when they would tell us to scram, and they were good people, they're good folks, I love them. When they would tell us to scram, everyone would go to my house. Then they're like, we got to play in the sausage patties, but it's okay. uh, but yeah, in high school is really where it just kind of took off. I started, just listening to other folks. I got, the opportunity to play at some of these hall parties. I was always like that last guy on, or someone was doing me a favor by fitting me in. But I was listening to folks like Jesse De La Pena, who brought up like the new wave set, and Rich DeVizio, and that crew, along with Rick the Ripper and Gabriel Rodriguez, all those folks. I would go and I would see these parties, go to these parties, Caesars Inn on the South Side, Highlanders, a variety of other halls that I would go to. And I was part of a crew called Party Society. There were a lot of party crews back then. And
Oh yeah, I remember that.
yeah, a lot of them, right? And actually, I wanted to show my jacket. I don't bring this out often, but I do bring it out every now and then. And so it's an old party crew jacket that I had. Well, I'll do my best. But it's a Party Society, and my buddy Danny, the Wild One, Danny Ibanez, he spelled my name wrong. And at the time, I was going by Rick Get Down Guerrero, and he spelled my name with one R. And I'm like, dude, how are you gonna misspell my name? Anyhow, so I was part of this crew, and we had our own little DJ team, and then it just kind of fell off. Then I was just like, I was being a teenager, I was doing my thing, and I just didn't want to do the DJing thing anymore. Fast forward probably to the latter part of my high school. That was probably like a year or two. Probably, I would say senior year is when I met up with, who was that? Ernie Pedroza. I don't know if you know the name, Ernie Pedroza, and another gentleman by the name of Danny Garibay. They actually ran a show. I'll keep going because it looks like Angelo dropped, so he said just keep going. So I will do that. Ernie and Danny ran a show on WCYC, small radio station on the south side of Chicago, for those who are not familiar with it. Very small radio station. I think it had like 30 watts, and it covered maybe 30 block radius, but it was huge.
It does it every once in a while.
I got you. Yeah, it's okay. I
So
kept going.
Okay, good.
I kept going. Yeah. So this radio station, CYC, I was jumping into the CYC days, is that small station but powerful. It had so many followers, right? I was listening to them as a kid, and when I met these two good friends of mine, Ernie and Danny, they ran this show called the Alternative Network, and it was on Sunday evenings, I think from 5 to 8 p.m. And I don't remember how I was introduced to them, but we just hit it off right away. Started working with them on that show, and in parallel, Gino Romo, who I didn't know at the time. I knew of him; he was a big deal, but I didn't know him personally. Though we were on the same station, we just never really crossed paths. He was doing this. He was trying to find other talents for his show, for his hot mix show, and he put a contest out, and I didn't win because I never turned the tape in. But I remember, I think Triple S, this gentleman, Chris Triple S, had won, and but that's how I met Danny and Ernie, and they were like, hey, we got to turn this tape in so we could get on the mix show, and so on and so forth. Danny and Ernie, I don't remember what happened with the show, but I do remember kind of taking it over, or at least I was starting to host the show myself. And we played alternative music, new wave, you know, the Erasures of the world, the Depeche Modes of the world, things of that nature. Synth pop, right? They call it. So I was hosting this show, and the director of the station had approached me. His name was Chuck Wren, and this other gentleman, Miguel Patino. He approached me and he shared, "Hey, dude, look, you don't have a license to do this, and you're gonna need to get a license, a non-commercial license, DJ license, or on-air personality license." And I was like, you know what? I want to keep the show going, and Ernie fully supported it because he was the guy who ran the show, and so I took the classes, and lo and behold, I ended up taking these classes with these other DJs who I didn't know. I just knew their names. Adam Rock was one of them, and Delirious Danny. These guys are like veterans, right? I mean, they're like a staple in Chicago, right? Or at least from the South Side perspective. Um, and we were taking this class together, this on-air personality class together, and uh, yeah, we ended up getting our license. I ended up keeping the show going. The show ran for a couple of years, from like 94 to like 97, 98. But in parallel, that's when I started to meet folks like Gino Romo, Caveman, Gabriel Rodriguez, who I already knew from school things, and other relationships. But somehow I ended up on Gino's show. I know there was some history there, but somehow I landed on his show, which is really, really cool. Same with Delirious Danny and Adam Rock, and that just kind of took off, right? Because Gino's
Right.
show was like the show to be on, right? And it went, I think, every Friday from 8 to 12, maybe 7 to 12. And you know, you were committed. You know, as a DJ at the time, you were committed to put together a 30-minute mix every week, and it was a lot for some. You know, if you're going to school or if you're working, but we were all fully committed, and we did it, and it was fantastic. It was
What
really, really
what
cool.
school did you guys go to for the licensing? Where did
So it
you
was
end up?
yeah, it was actually part of the Boys and Girls Club, which is
Okay,
where WCYC was part of. They ran their own on-air personality programming, and it was kind of cool. I mean, you do learn a lot about radio, and you know,
right.
AM, FM, and you know, how to hit the post and the queue and all this stuff. And it was really, really cool. It was very interesting. I think I did the weather for a while on CYC. So that was really, really cool. I had a wonderful time. That was a very exciting time in my life, because it was, you know, the place that, you know, growing up, I'm like, oh man, I want to do that. I want to be on the radio. I want to do this. I want to be like those guys that I'm listening on the radio.
G,
And here
G,
I was doing it.
Gino says you owe him.
I do. I do. Yeah.
So-
I mean, I owe him my life. I mean, he's fantastic. He's a wonderful, wonderful person. He's one of my forever best friends forever, if you will.
so you're doing mostly the radio then at this point, right? You're just doing the radio shows.
Yeah, I was
Um,
doing radio shows. I was doing some mobile, you know, DJing. People were, you know, I was doing, you know, parties and house parties and things like that. Yeah. And
so how old did you do when you did the transition? I'm thinking to sort of, because the general progression is from house parties to nightclubs per se, or teen clubs, or
yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
that's
Yes.
natural.
Right. Yes. And for those who are not familiar, I don't know who's tuning in, and thank you for tuning in, first of all. But I did invite some of my friends from the East and West Coast, former colleagues. So for those who are not familiar with at least the South Side of Chicago, they had a lot of teen parties, all age parties, if you will, right? And they were hosted in these halls, or these halls that belong to hotels, or just VFWs, right, if you will. And
Yeah,
right? And I think it was the same on the north side, of Chicago. And again, to share,
and some churches as well. There
in some
was
churches, yeah,
right.
yeah,
That was
Yeah, and to share a little bit, there was a little bit of a separation. I don't know if that's kind of a bad word to use, but a separation between the south side and the north side. There wasn't like a whole lot of blend. I don't know.
Oh,
At least,
I've talked about it already.
yeah,
We went to that whole scene because, and what I do know, and this is a perfect example. On the south side, you had a lot of like, for instance, when you had a lot of the dance music, but freestyle took a big part of that, and south side was like a freestyle haven forever. And CYC, believe it or not, was a big part of that as well. So you had the CYC and the alternative scene. That was kind of where on the south side. Whereas in the north side, it had the disco and the high energy more so. And there was a little bit of the I'm gonna say it because, and you're gonna more likely agree with me. The only crossover you ever seen was during the breakdancing aspect of it, because the breakdancing didn't pick sides of north to south and stuff like that.
right.
It was kind of the only time you heard that hip hop slash, that confusion and stuff like
Yes.
that. So that was the only time you seen kind of a crossover. But there was also the game more on the north side as well. So you had the dance group like the Golitos and Portates.
Yes.
So that had, and there at one point there would be people who would say, no, I'm not going to that side and I'm going to be in this side, and vice versa. Oh yeah, all these guys are freestyle heads
Uh-oh, I lost
over
you.
a separate scene. And it was like that for a little bit, or maybe about 5-year period. It was like, and I want to say it was like 82 to almost like 87, 88.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of that's why you said the separation. It's very true. It's very true.
Yeah, and it's very real. I mean, it was a separation, and when I say separation, it wasn't like we didn't like each other. We just didn't mix. We didn't blend. We didn't like. I didn't have a lot of friends on the north side, if any.
Right.
I think the only friend that I met toward the latter part of well, I'll get to that, but I didn't mix a lot with the north side folks. But you are right about like the dance crews. I was just sharing with my wife the other day about the dance crews. I remember going to parties, all age parties, at this roller rink called Dancing Wheels on the 55th in St. Louis, I think it was, on the south side. And they would, you weren't roller skating, they were dancing. But in the middle of this party, they would stop the party and you would have these performances by the Colitos, Imported Taste. I don't remember any of the other crews, but I do remember those two.
Do you remember the year that you seen this? Was it like early 80s?
It was definitely early 80s. And I'll tell you why, because my mom took me there.
Okay. And the reason why I'm saying that is because that's where the Floor Masters did their first performance, was at that dancing disco wheels / dancing wheels. And I remember Golitos and Radar was there as well from the Golitos. And I remember that was the first time that anybody seen breakdancing ever in Chicago. They would for basically the dancers to be rolling on the floor. It was like, whoa, where everybody doing the dance group aspect of it. And then all of a sudden here they see us doing this footwork on the floor, and then, or our hands touching the floor per se, other than a flip or something like that.
Yes.
But that was at Disco Wheels. And I remember that was where kind of, it was a Sunday afternoon, I think, that we used to go there at Disco Wheels. And that's where you're right. That was the kind of the only time that you see dance groups.
Yeah, but it was really, really cool. I mean, it wasn't something like, it wasn't normal. Okay, I don't want to say normal, but it was just not what you would see. I never thought in a million years I would see this, right? But again, I was a 10-year-old, right, at this party, and most kids were teenagers, and I was there just admiring the DJs and what they're doing, right? But then you would see these dancers. I'm like, holy cow, this is like really cool stuff. But anyhow, that was very unique, but very, very, very cool time, and really cool time to be a part of, where music was really, really just cool altogether,
Right.
So let's hear. So yes, I think your question around when did you, I guess, when did that transformation period happen from, mobile DJs or radio to nightclubs, right?
Right, correct.
Yeah, you. I mean, I think that would be the natural step. I don't know, but at least for me, it was. I had this radio station. It helped me, tremendously. Get gigs here and there, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun times. It wasn't until I had DJ'd at, and I remember this. I remember this because I had a conversation with a friend of mine, friend of ours, probably a mutual friend of ours, Carlos Feliciano. We were just talking about this before COVID. We were at this bar on the south side, and it was a De La Salle gathering actually, and he just happened to be there, and I'm talking to him about an event that he threw, and this was probably '95 or maybe '94, '95, because I'm going to share my age. I was 20. I'm 45 now. I was 20 at the time, and I was playing at his event, and I was kind of. I think this was a time where a lot of DJs. I'm going to keep rolling because oh yeah,
No,
you
no,
shut
I'm
down
here,
for a
I'm
minute.
here, I'm
Yeah,
here.
okay.
Good.
This was a time where a lot of DJs, at least the DJs that I used to play with, were like, okay, I'm next, or who's next, or I'm supposed to go next, and why is he going next, and when I was supposed to go on next. Um, and I remember that happened to me, and I don't remember who it was or what it was, and that's not important. But I remember it kind of being sort of wrong to Carlos, and I had apologized to him actually a few last year sometime. I was like, dude, you may not remember this, but I'm sorry. But if it weren't for you putting me on when you put me on because I wanted to be on at that time, um, my career within the nightclub era probably would have never happened. And what happened was he put me on, and he was like, dude, you were on next, just go. And I did, and the crowd reacted, and it reacted very well. It was cool. I guess it was a good performance. Lo and behold, a mutual friend of ours, Frankie V, part of at the time Volume Entertainment.
Right.
We were just chatting earlier, actually. He was out, and assuming he was scouting for DJs, I don't know, but I remember him coming up to me after my gig or my set, and I've never met Frankie before. It was the first time meeting him, but I knew of him, and he was very well respected DJ at the time, and then now promoter. Um, he shared, he had asked us like, hey, I want you to do that same exact set next week at my sister's house, La Casa de mi Hermana, right?
Mhm.
And I was like, yeah, that's cool, absolutely. He's like, this is a nightclub. It's big deal. So can you do that? Or would you do that? I was like, yeah, absolutely. I mean, why wouldn't I, right? Um, so I did do that. I went the very next week. It was La Casa de mi Hermana. I think it was owned by two sisters. I don't remember their names.
Yes, it was
Right?
Sarita and Soraya.
Yeah. So, for those who are not familiar with La Casa de Hermana, it was a nightclub that was on 720 North Wells in Chicago, and this is the heart of downtown, um, or at least within the River North area, which is now known as River North. Um, and this was a big deal. I remember walking in, or I was getting ready to walk in. I went with my best friend, Mark Medina. He's no longer with us. Um, but he went with me, and I was nervous as hell, right? And for two reasons. One, here I am going to a nightclub, first one ever, right? And second, I wasn't 21 yet, so I was like, oh shoot. So I'm gonna go to the door, and they're not gonna let me in. Um, Showed up, and back then you had these big crates of records, and they did let me in. So a cousin of Frankie knew who I was, and he let me in. And when I walked in, my mind was just blown. I was like, "Whoa!" I'm like, "Where is this? Like this is an entirely different world, right? This is where
Right,
people,
right.
right? I mean, and you're very familiar with the
So,
nightclub
so
industry."
a South Side DJ discovers downtown. Is
Yeah.
basically.
Yes. So so it was a big deal, and I was like super nervous. It was crazy. Um, so I remember going up, and I go up to the top floor because I think it was 4 floors, right, or something to that effect. But it was the top floor, big dance floor. And I remember at the time DJ Diablo was playing. I didn't know Diablo. I didn't know what rock pop was, rock pop in Espanol. I did not. I never heard of it, right? Until that moment, walking in, and I heard him playing, and I'm like, okay, this is interesting. How am I going to blend into this? This is crazy. And these are the days for me. I had a program, right? I followed my program. Sometimes I would color outside the lines and I would play something else, but I would try to stick to what I had said already, right?
Right, right.
From a music perspective. So I went on, and it went very, very well. You know, the crowd reacted, and it was great turnout. And then I think this Sunday, the day after or something, Frankie called me and he's like, "Hey, I want you to do the same thing again next week." Um, my memory's a little foggy, but I know it was like a week or two later or so. He had shared, "We want you to join, Volume, but you have to be exclusive to us and us only." And I was like, "What?" Like, exclusive? I'm like, wait a minute here, right? He's like, but to me at the time, I was thinking, this is a no-brainer. Of course I'm going to do this. Frankie's very well respected.
But also the fact that saying exclusive, that
Yeah.
was not like something never said that you're gonna be exclusive on anything. It's like you're gonna be on our team and that's it.
Yes. Yeah. And I had other gigs going on, right? I mean, it was like just other things. And they were all H parties, and I was doing stuff. So the bookings were there, but like we weren't really getting paid, at least not much of any. There were a few DJs that were getting paid, and most of the DJs were doing it for free, right? And then
Yeah.
when Frankie had approached me, sure, we want you to be exclusive. We're going to pay you X amount of dollars, and we're going to continue,
So
continue to book you. Yeah.
who were the team members that you were with?
At the time,
Yeah.
with Volume. Okay, so with Volume, and I'll get into V5 because it did transform into V5.
Right.
For Volume Entertainment, at that time, and like I said, mi hermana, it was out of control Pete. Frankie had to remind me earlier because I was like, who was it? Oscar? No, he's like out of control Pete, who I used to work with on CYC, or at least I knew him from there. Diablo, Incognito, so Arturo, Frank Monroy's cousin, and ooh, I think that was it at the time. I know there were other DJs on the other floors, but I didn't know them, and yeah. So I hope that answers your question. And maybe different. Maybe more history about that than I do. Maybe you were in that club and I didn't know it.
No, I was
Okay.
doing Tropicana at the time, so I was
Okay.
so that was and that was why you want to hear something funny about that is that I was doing Tropicana, and I know my sister's house. It was, if in case anybody doesn't know the coordination. Let's do the timeline here. There was originally Kairos there first, okay. Then it became house. Then afterwards it became 720. And then it closed down and then it came 720 again. Always, Ed Tunney was always the guy who was, the ones there, even though Suri and Sarita used to be the owners of there. And I don't know if you knew that after they left there, they went and bought the Dance Factory, which is, I don't know, and it turned into Convent afterwards and stuff like that.
Yes.
So that's kind of the time frame and stuff like that.
Yes. And that was 95. I remember 95 because I wasn't 21 yet. I was just turning 21 that year. And the timeline for me was I was doing that at my sister's house and the club, my sister's house. And that ended, and I don't remember when, but it ended, and we did a short stint. When I say we, I mean Palladium, Volume. We went to Palladium. We were there for a short period, maybe a few months. I don't remember. And then we moved to
That was
720.
with Rico Suave, right? That was upstairs on the Rico Suave or Rocco Mix. Wasn't he upstairs at Palladium as well?
I don't know. To be honest, I didn't know Rico Suave or Rocco Mix at the time.
Okay.
And again, this world was very, very new to me. I didn't know a lot of these DJs, but it could be. They may have been doing
Either
something.
one of the Franks will clarify that.
Yes,
So,
yes, they would. Yeah, they'll check me on that. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yes.
So it went from my sister's house to Palladium to 720, back to 720, where
Right.
the former my sister's house. And I remember I had a residency there where I was playing upstairs, but then I played on the first floor, the floor that you walk in. That was kind of like my room, and switched back and forth with other DJs, right? So in the spring of 97 is when Convent opened. And this was the big deal. I remember, I don't remember why I remember these things, but I remember Franklin being the creative that he is. He created these flyers, and every week a new letter was on the flyer, and they were just being passed out. Like, I knew what it was, but nobody else knew, and so you would see a B, then you would see a C, then a T, then, and then before you know it, it was, I think the last one said, here's, our new nightclub, Convent.
Right, because they had that the break off from 720.
Yeah,
and I remember it had its moments where and I 720 was going on, and the reason why I knew about it honestly is my daughter was at the time 14 years old, and I used to pass out flyers for what I do, right? Over at Palladium or Palladium at the time. And we were doing successful with Palladium, doing after that. And my daughter, I used to have her hire 3 of her friends that I says, hey, we're gonna go pass out flyers. So we would do this running around in the Palladium, at 720. And we were like, okay, you hit that side of the street, go that side of the street, and we have a team of 5 people hitting the streets, boom. And then we'll go to the other club and boom. And we hit like 6 clubs in the night and stuff like that. But I would always sit down with Ed. I would talk to Ed Tunney at the front door. And I remember Ed Tunney was very concerned about, oh man, these guys, they're trying to take my crowd, that, because he had his crowd and the Volume had their crowd, and they're taking it to Convent. And I remember because the owner of Tropicana, Palladium, was my friend as well. So we were always talking about, these guys are trying to, it's unfortunate they're going to split a crowd. That was the concern. But we know that didn't happen because you guys did very well at Convent.
Convent was really, really cool. That was a whole oh crap moment. I remember walking in the Convent. But that was in April of 97. I have the flyer somewhere, but I remember seeing, I think it was me, Diablo, Incognito. And what was really, really cool about this was that there's for me at least, a DJ friend of mine, actually a grade school friend of mine, his name's Glenn. He goes by the name of DJ Pulsate. So he was a Crowbar resident, right? So he was kind of big time. He played at some really big places, right? And what was cool is because we grew up kind of teaching each other, DJing, and or at least we learned about it at the same time. I kind of showed him, like, hey, this is how you do that, and he would show me a few things. But we ended up, I didn't realize that Frankie knew him, and then we ended up being on the same, same night, the opening night, and that was.
What was his DJ name?
His name was DJ Pulsate, Pulz, and then the number 8. He's actually in Nevada now. He's in Las Vegas, but he's an old grade school friend of mine, and then he moved his way over to. I know he was at Crowbar. I don't remember what other venues he was at, but he would play with like Miguel Martin, a few other folks who were within the crowbar scene, and that was an entirely different crowd, right?
Right. And his music was probably different too.
It was, yeah, very different. It was like a progressive trans house before the convent people were introduced to that, right? Um,
Right.
so it was really cool, but it was really cool because like we were reuniting as friends. I'm like, oh man, Glenn, I'm like, this is really cool that we're here and we're doing our thing. So Convent, for those who do not know, was a nightclub back in, I think from 97 and went on to 99, at least from a volume perspective, the promoter that I worked for. And then it lived shortly on after that. I don't remember how long after that. But we were there from 97 to 99. I have the closing flyer, actually. I was just looking at it. And it was a good run. It was, there was a lot of, it was just a really cool nightclub. And we had thousands of people in there. We had 2 rooms, 3 rooms or something to that effect, different music. And it was just a good time. It was a really good time. It was really cool. I had a lot of fun, met a lot of people, built a lot of relationships, within Convent. And at Convent, that's where V5 was born. And V5, I don't know what Frank Monroy or Frankie's intentions were, but behind the V5, other than there were 5 of us and we were that DJ crew. So it was V5, right? And the V5 DJs at the time were Diablo, Incognito, Galletas was on there for a minute, and Pesado.
What's that?
Yeah, Pesado, and then me. And then I think somewhere along the way, we just started, the 5 that just wasn't it. There were more than 5 of us, right? There were,
Right. Well,
yeah,
trust me, it
yeah,
happens.
yeah.
It's natural
So I
natural
mean,
progression.
like your crew,
Yeah.
I mean, you have 4, but I'm sure you had a
Oh
variety.
my God, yeah. It
Yeah,
had this sound, but like the Hot Mix 5. It wasn't just 5, it was
exactly,
and I
exactly.
think that's where it could be wrong, but maybe that's what Frank did the B5 because of the Hot
Yeah,
Mix 5. And maybe that was kind of like, okay, there was a success with the 5.
yeah,
And then, and
yeah,
I knew he kind of had a sub theme for V5, and it was rock pop alternativo. That was kind of his label per se. That was because I
yeah.
guess that was his crowd. That was kind of
Right,
the I mean, you guys played everything, but it was kind of
precisely. Yeah,
their
yeah,
staple per se.
yeah. And it was, it was a good time. We had a good crew. Nocturno, this other guy Nocturno, he joined, and we actually became really good friends. And actually, I'm friends with all of them. We became really good friends, inside and outside of the nightclub industry. And it just kind of took off from there. I mean, V5 was born, and once Convent had shut down, or at least we moved away from Convent, there were a variety of other nightclubs. We did the Drink nightclub. I remember doing First Fridays there. I think it was. I remember November '99 was the first time that I had played there, and it was at the
And
Drink.
and I think that's V5 had created First Fridays, right? That was the kind of their first.
Yes, that was, if not the first or one of the first. And again, my memory's foggy, but I think that's probably the first Friday was at a nightclub. So the second Drink nightclub, there were 2 of them. There was one that was on, I don't remember, it was across the street from Shelter. But then the second Drink was where Carnaval is at right now, off of the expressway in downtown Chicago. And
Unfortunately.
so I remember we only had the back room, and that was okay, right? Frank being the promoters that they are, they knew that we're going to attract the crowd, and maybe we'll get 200-300 people, maybe not. Well, we had like 2,000 people at the door. I mean, and I kid you not, there were 2,000 people at the door. And the promoters, over time, the owners or the promoters or whoever owned the
The
Drink,
venue.
the venue, like all other venues, had
Yeah.
shared, oh man, this is a huge turnout. I think we need to expand this a little bit more and let you guys over to the larger part of the club. And so be it. It did, and that's how it went with a lot of the nightclubs. Like, well, we'll give them the back of the nightclub, and then it would be a great turnout, right? But there were a variety of other venues that, Voyeur was another one. I know I had a residency there with Martin Luna. Actually, we were played there for a year, maybe. Transit, the list goes on. Rive Gauche, I think we were there a few times. But what was really, really cool, for me at least, was around that time, 99 to 2001, is when I started traveling for V5, and they started doing events outside of Chicago.
Right, I remember that.
And it was kind of crazy. It was exciting for me, for someone in his mid-20s. Like, hey, Rick, we need you to fly to New York. You're going to play, you're going to stay, but then we need you back Saturday night to play at wherever we were playing.
Right.
Oh shit. And it was going on for several weekends. We had events at, I think, the Hard Rock Cafe in Los Angeles, which was really cool. And yeah, I mean, it was, all in all, it was really, really cool. It was a good time. I had, I made some really, really meaningful relationships and just friends that I consider friends forever, just from music, right? That's a big deal. So yeah, that's kind of my story, and I could dive in more, but that's where I'm at from a nightclub perspective.
Well, no, I think I know it was unfortunate that me and you never got a chance to DJ together per se and stuff like that, because I knew that the boundaries had to be set, because I know Frank had we had one incident that I had hired Alberto Scandalo, and you guys were Alberto was working for Frank when it was Babaloo's and Liquid and stuff like that. And I remember we tried to do Liquid together for a salsa night, and it wasn't great, or something didn't happen right. I remember it was just, and then that's when I did Green Dolphin. I started Green Dolphin, and Roberto was supposed to be the one, and it turned out actually successful. And I remember that was the whole thing, is that Frank wanted, hey man, we have a crew and we don't do this. And I had to respect that. That's why, that's how that boss is. I was a different kind of boss. I was like, and not to say that I'm trying to say anything bad about Frank. That was just his work, the way he wanted it.
Sure.
Right. And that was, like I said, nothing bad about it,
Right.
and believe it or not, me and Frank, we used to talk business all the time. We used to go, we see each other at coffee, and we used to talk about the business, the marketing. I'm the one who got him Constant Contact, or basically I say, hey man, that's what you want to use. You want to use Constant Contact, and and after he did it, he was like, oh man, thank you very much. So as much as people think that we were like against each other, we actually talked about a lot of things. We talked a lot of things. We always look at each other and try to say, hey, what works, what doesn't work, and stuff like that.
And Frank and Frankie, they were businessmen, right? I mean, this was their career, and this is what they're still doing, right? And I think at the time, as a DJ, you had a hard time just seeing that, right? Because it was like, I was there to do my thing, but there was a business side to it, and I look at it now, and I've learned a lot from DJing. I carry that into what I do now in the technology space. I've learned the business side of things, and looking at folks like Frank Monroy and even yourself. I mean, these are empires that you folks built, right? And these were, thousands of people would come out every there was plenty of people to share, right? To go to these venues. And you would have 1,000 people, we would have 1,000 people, then you'd have other folks. And it was very, very, very cool. I very much appreciate, that I went through that and I had the opportunity to do that. But I carry a lot of that through what I do now, being in front of, 1,000 to 2,000, packed dance floor. to speaking to executives what I do now, you know, in the technology space, you know.
So
So you
what do you
learn
do?
that.
What do you do now? If you don't mind me asking, what do you?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, happy to share. No, I work for a PaaS company. It's a platform as a service company. It's called ServiceNow. Um, and it's a wonderful company. I've been there for about 6 months now. And I work externally with customers, or at least one of my customers. I'm a support account manager, and I work with exclusively with a company, and I am their contact, their advocate. I'm the person that brings in the right people at the right time to have the right conversations, right? And I was doing that. I was at LinkedIn for about 8 years before that. Um, and I was doing that internally. I was running IT support for the first 5 years at LinkedIn in the Chicago offices. And here I actually have a little bit of a funny story. And I was doing that, and it was wonderful company, great company. And one day I go across the street during my time at LinkedIn, and I'm sitting at this pub called bar called Dylan's on Clinton. They're eating, and I see this flyer, and I'm like, "Los Cuatro Fantásticos," and I'm like, DJ Pirata. I'm like, "Holy cow, man!" And I'm looking around. I'm like, "Yeah, you could turn this into a venue. This is doable, you know." And lo and behold, you've been there for a while, and I didn't know
Nine
that,
years. 9 years.
dude. I had no idea, and so I've been working. I was working across the street for 9 years, you know, 8 years at the LinkedIn offices. So um, yeah, so I've been working in the technology space for 20 years now, and that's what I was doing as a day job. Um,
Right.
and then I would DJ at nighttime. So I was sleeping very little. And then and so I'll
Welcome,
share with
welcome
you.
to the
Yeah, I
everybody.
mean,
Welcome to the DJ world. That's
you don't sleep. And I had kids at a very young age. I'm blessed for that because it made me mature and grow up, or somewhat have a different opinion about that. But it matured me a little bit. I have two older kids, Victor and Alexis. They're 27 and 26, and
okay.
you know, they're doing their own thing. They're out of college. They have their own places. You know, my daughter lives in Lakeview, and my son lives in Lamont, right down the block from me. And but you know, I had a day job. I was doing IT stuff, and I remember going into my office and closing the door after playing at some club, coming in and closing the door and taking a nap. And I had the coolest director ever, this guy Jerry Taylor, and he would knock on the door. He used to call me Frankie. It's my middle name. He'd be like, "Frankie." I'm like, "Yeah, what's up?" He's like, "You all right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm okay." He's like, "All right, go to sleep, and I'll call you if I need you." I could say that now because you know, he's not going to fire me, or who my manager, you know, his report. You know, anyhow, that was a while ago. But you don't sleep much, and it burns you out. And for those
I know.
who are interested in DJing, it does burn you out, but it's fun, you know. But you also have to be a professional, you know, and
Correct. Right.
you have to build those relationships because you don't know when you're going to work with someone again down the road. I've learned my lessons a few times, right? And but you have to be professional, and you have to go with it, and build those relationships, and take it serious. You know, if you're out there and you want to, you know, if you have your brand, if your brand is to wear a, you know, a cap and this and whatever it is that you decide to do, that's okay. But I think you still have to be professional, and bring the business side of you out.
Right. No, that's very true. I what I want to know. Are you still doing mobiles? Are you still doing nightclubs in a sense? Are you doing, or you just, or is it just kind of do you still get?
Hmm. So let me do this first of all. I'm going to take you off of my headset because my headset just yelled at me and said, "Hey, your battery's going low." So I'm going to take you over to the microphone on here. So excuse me, people.
No
I'm so
problem, no
sorry.
problem, no problem. So while he's doing that, I know it's real quick. That's it. Not that long. So that's cool. Um, Oh, by the way, I just want to tell everybody, thank you for logging on. I see a bunch of people. Harv, thank you for talking. A lot of people. So thank you very much. Thank you for all the support. And you're back.
Okay.
Hey.
How was that? Is that
Oh,
good?
that's good.
Okay. Let me know if you can't hear me. Happy
We can
to.
hear you really good. Trust
Okay.
me.
Good. Okay. I'm sorry. You were asking me a question.
No,
What am I doing now?
Yeah.
That's funny. I'm not. This COVID experience that we're going through, which is very unfortunate. It is very real. It's impacted some people within my circle, not in my immediate circle here, but external family members of mine. And so it's very, very real. And please take it serious. I ask everyone to please take it serious. It's not a joke. So this COVID experience, unfortunately, inspired me. But I have to give the credit to where it's deserved. My good friend Gino Romo and Brian Woods, good friend of mine, Brian Woods, and John Tapia, we had a chat going on, and we were texting each other, and we're like, "Hey, what does it take to do a live stream?" Sure enough, we pulled together all the stuff, and Brian went out and bought this cable, and we did all this thing, and we were ramping it up, and we were pumping it up, and we were going to go to Gino's house. And then I think that week was the week that the governor said, everyone stays home. And I was like, okay, Gino, I'm not going to your house. And it was a big fail for me. But for him, he streamed, and he had 400, 500, 600 people for his first stream, which is really, really cool, right?
Right.
For me, I then did it the following week, and it inspired me to really reboot this DJ skill set that I have, right? And I still have my stuff, I still have my records and my turntables and all that good stuff. But with my friends really just kind of pushing it, but in a good way, like, hey, do it, get back into it. I did, but it's also, for me, I look at it as it's like my headspace, right? And it's my me time. So and with that said, I figured, hey, I might as well do this for those who will tune in, and so I do it every Friday, or now every other Friday. But to answer your question, I don't do the mobile stuff anymore. I don't do the nightclubs.
Okay.
I was doing a few gigs here and there for LinkedIn. When I was working at LinkedIn, I would do the corporate parties. I would bring in my stuff, or they would buy stuff, and we would just do.
Oh, it was more convenience per se, because
Yep.
they knew you, and they say, hey, here's how much we're going to give you. Here's how much the budget is. Boom, and you do it.
Yeah. And even more times than not, I would just do it just to do it. I mean, it was like,
Right.
And there were times where like, hey, we're going to pay you. I'm like, you don't have to pay me. I'm here. I'm doing this because I love to do it. And it's a no-brainer for me, and
Right.
but then they would push. They were like, no, we're going to pay you. I'm like, okay, well then I'll take it.
It's a tax write-off.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So that is, I where will this go after, things relax within Illinois? I don't know. I think wherever the wind takes me, right? If it's up to my wife, we're going to be sailing in North Carolina somewhere, or in Florida. But from a DJ perspective, I mean, if people reach out and want me to do a set here and there, I'm more than happy to entertain that, because I have a lot of fun doing these live streams.
Right.
And, I've found that it's kind of relit a fire in me, right? To get back into it. And I am getting new music now, and it's things that I really enjoy doing. Like, why let it rest when you can push forward? And I hope it's doing some people some good when I'm streaming. I'm hoping that I'm providing some relief and having a good time.
Well, I think everybody, is dealing with, being claustrophobic, anxiety, everything else. I mean, listening to the news and everything like that, and family members that are going bad. I just found out that so many people are passing away, so many people are sick and stuff like that. And it's a dual factor that I see happening. Some people it doesn't affect at all. It's not affecting at all. Nothing at all. My parents are, my dad is healthy.
Yeah.
Everybody immediate family is healthy. It doesn't, and I don't have that experience per se, but
Yeah.
then you got those other people that have, I just seen online, a mother and father passed away yesterday at the same time, and then the aunt passing away, and then you see like a whole bunch of people and families just going, and it's like, oh my God, or getting sick and stuff like that. And then hearing a couple of the people that we know
Yes.
are sick, personal friends are sick as well.
Right.
So it's going to affect people very differently.
Right.
I don't know, how many people are going to jump in that pool,
Yes.
right away.
Yes. Right.
That's what I call it, the pool, jump in the pool. And it's a big unknown. It's a real big unknown because we don't have anything to compare it to as far as that bar. We don't know what
Exactly.
it's a real unknown. So it's like,
but I also see this as, and this is the technology side of me coming through. I see this as an opportunity, for some to really, leverage different technologies and in my personal opinion, I think it will be a very long time until folks are comfortable, until governments are okay with having social, we'll call it nightclubs and bars and things. The way things were. I think for those businesses, at least from a nightclub and maybe DJ perspective, but we'll say promoter and nightclub business perspective, what your plans were before March, your 1, 3, 5-year plan before March are gone. Like you have to, unfortunately, you have to pivot and go a different direction, right? And that's for everyone, right? But from an entertainer perspective, you're seeing a lot of concerts being held online, and artists are online doing their thing, and I think there's an opportunity to do some really cool things. And as I was thinking about this, I remember having a conversation with I'll mention him again, Frankie V. I remember him sharing an idea. This was like 10 years ago. We were talking and he's like, I have this idea. I think this is a really, really cool idea. He's like, but hear me out. I'm like, okay. He's like, what if we have this app where you order your drink and you go up to the bar and it's there and it's ready for you and it's done. That's it. There's nothing else. You're not waiting. You're not doing anything. It's there. And I'm like, Frankie, that's a really good idea for right now. I'm thinking now, right? I'm like, these are things where I think as we're here in lockdown, people are going to be very innovative. They're going to come up with things like that. They're going to come up with things like, yeah, let's have Prieto have an event where maybe 50 people are, but there could be satellite, places where you're going to have a feed and you're going to have people DJing. I think there's going to be a lot of different ways of entertaining.
well, I mean, this show is one of those.
Yes, it is. As I mentioned, this is really cool. I mean, and for me, and I shared earlier offline, for me, being on a Zoom is it's not it's pretty normal for me. I mean, I've been like when I was at LinkedIn, it was very we were very video heavy. So there wasn't a day that went by where I was not on a call with someone from Dublin or someone from London or someone from the West Coast over video. Because that's just the way we operated. It was always video.
Correct.
But to see people like you take this during this time and really leverage it and pull together, these archives of music history, Chicago music history, it's pretty badass. So I really applaud you for that.
Thank you.
That's really, really cool.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're at past our time.
Okay.
Rick, any last words to everybody that's online, everybody that's going to see this in the past, in the future per se?
You know,
Anything?
just we're gonna get through this. I know we will. This COVID experience. Please be safe. You know, everyone has their own perspective. I get it, as you shared, Angelo. Some people are okay with it, some people are not, and they have their own, and that's okay. You're entitled to that. But I think we're going to get through this. Continue to support your DJs out there who are streaming. You know, the Victor Salazars, the Carlos Felicianos, the Gino Romos, of the world. They're all doing a fantastic job, and it takes a lot to be out there not knowing who's tuning in. Right? Like, I don't know how many people are on here. There could be 2, but there could be 20. Right? So I think continue to support them, and yeah, just be safe and have a fun summer. Take advantage of the warm weather when it comes. Outside of that, check out my Facebook page, DJ Rick Guerrero, and I'll be streaming this Friday at 7 p.m. So give it a whirl, and thank you for your time.
Cool. Good. Thank you guys from the front door. Don't go anywhere, and I'll talk to you guys. All right. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.